They say fame shows you the best of a person, but what if it actually hides the worst? Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on the darkest secrets of famous people. Stories so shocking, so disturbing that many were buried for years, erased from headlines, and quietly forgotten. These aren't rumors or internet myths. These are real moments when powerful, beloved icons crossed lines they thought no one would ever see. Because behind the red carpets, private jets, and glowing smiles, there is a side of celebrity that is carefully hidden, and sometimes it's terrifying. Let's begin with a name that once stood for brilliance, imagination, and family-friendly magic: Walt Disney. To the world, he was the cheerful dreamer who built the happiest place on earth. But behind the scenes, former employees and archived records paint a much darker picture. Disney was known for keeping secret files on his own workers, documenting their political beliefs, personal habits, and even their private relationships. During the height of the Cold War, he worked closely with government agencies, reportedly providing names of employees he believed were disloyal. Careers were quietly destroyed. People vanished from the studio overnight, never to speak publicly again. The magical empire, it seems, was built on fear as much as fantasy. Next, we turn to a man whose smile became a symbol of joy for millions: Charlie Chaplin. His silent films made the world laugh during its darkest times, but his personal life was filled with controversy that studios desperately tried to hide. Chaplin was accused of pursuing underage girls and secretly marrying extremely young women. One relationship involved a teenager who later claimed she was manipulated and emotionally controlled. Lawsuits followed, the media tried to expose him, and yet the truth was quietly buried under his legendary status. To this day, his image remains mostly untouched by the shadow that followed him everywhere he went. Then there is Marilyn Monroe, the ultimate symbol of beauty, glamour, and heartbreak. The world remembers her as a tragic star who couldn't handle fame. But what many don't know is how deeply she was trapped inside a system that treated her like a product, not a human. Studio executives monitored her, controlled her personal life, and forced her into relationships to protect the studio's image. She was heavily medicated, isolated, and constantly threatened by being replaced if she spoke out. People close to her later claimed she was preparing to reveal powerful secrets, and then, suddenly, she was gone. Officially, it was called an accident, but many still believe her death was anything but. Now, let's talk about Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll. His music changed the world, but his private life raised serious questions. Elvis was known for becoming romantically involved with very young girls, including Priscilla, whom he met when she was only 14 years old. While fans saw a fairy tale love story, insiders revealed a controlling relationship where she was shaped into the image he wanted. He decided how she dressed, who she spoke to, and even when she could leave the house. Behind the glittering stage lights, Elvis lived in a world where power and obsession blurred into something deeply unsettling. And finally, we come to Michael Jackson, a man whose talent was unmatched and whose influence was global. But his life was surrounded by allegations that shook the entire world. Multiple families accused him of inappropriate behavior with children. Settlements were made. Investigations followed. Some believed he was innocent. Others were convinced the truth had been hidden by money and silence. What remains undeniable is that the stories, the testimonies, and the unexplained details left a permanent stain on one of the most legendary careers in history. These are only the first shadows in a much larger darkness. The more famous the face, the deeper the secret seems to run. And as you'll see in the next part, the stories only get more disturbing. Fame doesn't just protect secrets, it buries them. The higher someone rises, the harder the world tries to pretend their shadows don't exist. And as we move deeper into these hidden stories, the pattern becomes clear. Power doesn't just change people, it reveals who they truly are. Let's start with Oprah Winfrey, a woman known as a symbol of hope, truth, and empowerment. To the public, she is the voice of healing, but critics have long questioned the silence surrounding the people she promoted. Several controversial figures accused of serious crimes were given platforms on her show, where they were presented as misunderstood instead of dangerous. Former employees have claimed that behind the cameras, a strict culture of control existed, where staff were warned not to challenge her decisions or speak publicly. While Oprah herself has never been charged with any crime, many believe she helped protect powerful people by choosing influence over accountability. Next is John Lennon, the peace-loving icon whose music changed the world. His image was built on love, unity, and rebellion against against violence. But in his personal life, Lennon admitted to physically abusing women and being emotionally distant from his first son. In interviews, he openly described his violent behavior before fame, yet the world chose to remember only the peaceful lyrics. His transformation is often praised, but the damage he caused is rarely discussed, a reminder that even voices of peace can hide violent pasts. Then there's Princess Diana, often called the People's Princess. The world saw her as a victim of the royal system, but few knew how heavily her life was monitored. Friends later revealed that she believed her phone was tapped, her movements tracked, and her relationships controlled. She felt trapped in a palace that looked like a fairy tale from the outside, but functioned like a cage from within. In the final months of her life, Diana reportedly told people she feared for her safety, and then, suddenly, she was gone. Official stories were given, but the questions never disappeared. Now, let's talk about Jim Carrey, a master of comedy who made millions laugh. Behind the scenes, he struggled deeply with depression, substance use, and emotional isolation. After the tragic death of his former partner, leaked messages and court documents suggested a toxic relationship where fame, drugs, and control played a dangerous role. While no legal guilt was proven, the case exposed a side of Carrey that fans never expected, one filled with pain, secrets, and regret. Finally, let's talk about Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple. The world celebrates him as a visionary, but those closest to him described a man who could be ruthless, emotionally cold, and manipulative. He denied his own daughter for years, refused to acknowledge her, and treated employees with fear-based leadership. People were fired publicly, humiliated, and pushed to emotional breaking points. The success of Apple came at a cost, one paid by the people who stood closest to him. These stories don't exist to cancel legends. They exist to remind us that no one is untouchable. The truth doesn't disappear just because someone becomes famous. And in the final part, we'll uncover secrets so dark they changed history forever. Fame doesn't just protect secrets, it buries them. The higher someone rises, the harder the world tries to pretend their shadows don't exist. And as we move deeper into these hidden stories, the pattern becomes clear. Power doesn't just change people, it reveals who they truly are. Let's start with Oprah Winfrey, a woman known as a symbol of hope, truth, and empowerment. To the public, she is the voice of healing, but critics have long questioned the silence surrounding the people she promoted. Several controversial figures accused of serious crimes were given platforms on her show, where they were presented as misunderstood instead of dangerous. Former employees have claimed that behind the cameras, a strict culture of control existed, where staff were warned not to challenge her decisions or speak publicly. While Oprah herself has never been charged with any crime, many believe she helped protect powerful people by choosing influence over accountability. Next is John Lennon, the peace-loving icon whose music changed the world. His image was built on love, unity, and rebellion against violence. But in his personal life, Lennon admitted to physically abusing women and being emotionally distant from his first son. In interviews, he openly described his violent behavior before fame, yet the world chose to remember only the peaceful lyrics. His transformation is often praised, but the damage he caused is rarely discussed, a reminder that even voices of peace can hide violent pasts. Then there's Princess Diana, often called the People's Princess. The world saw her as a victim of the royal system, but few knew how heavily her life was monitored. Friends later revealed that she believed her phone was tapped, her movements tracked, and her relationships controlled. She felt trapped in a palace that looked like a fairy tale from the outside, but functioned like a cage from within. In the final months of her life, Diana reportedly told people she feared for her safety, and then, suddenly, she was gone. Official stories were given, but the questions never disappeared. Now, let's talk about Jim Carrey, a master of comedy who made millions laugh. Behind the scenes, he struggled deeply with depression, substance use, and emotional isolation. After the tragic death of his former partner, leaked messages and court documents suggested a toxic relationship where fame, drugs, and control played a dangerous role. While no legal guilt was proven, the case exposed a side of Carrey that fans never expected, one filled with pain, secrets, and regret. Finally, let's talk about Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple. The world celebrates him as a visionary, but those closest to him described a man who could be ruthless, emotionally cold, and manipulative.
The world loves legends. We build statues
lives out of human beings, then refuse to look when cracks begin to show. But some secrets are so dark, so powerful, that they didn't just destroy lives, they changed history itself. Let's begin with J. Edgar Hoover, the man who ran the FBI for nearly half a century. To the public, he was America's top lawman. In reality, he was feared by presidents, celebrities, and politicians alike. Hoover secretly collected files on powerful figures, recording their private lives, affairs, addictions, and crimes. Anyone who tried to remove him was threatened with exposure. He ruled through fear, not law. The man meant to protect the country was secretly controlling it from the shadows. Next is Pablo Escobar, a name that became legend. To some, he was a hero who gave money to the poor. To others, he was the most ruthless criminal in history. Escobar built schools and homes, but only to hide the truth. He ordered the murders of judges, journalists, politicians, and innocent families. His kindness was a mask, carefully designed to protect an empire built on blood. The people who praised him never saw the bodies buried beneath his success. Then there was Roman Polanski, an award-winning filmmaker whose career survived a crime that would have ended anyone else's. He admitted to drugging and assaulting a 13-year-old girl, then fled the country to avoid prison. Decades later, he continues to receive awards and praise. Many in Hollywood defended him, signed petitions for him, and welcomed him back as if nothing had happened. His freedom stands as proof that fame can sometimes be stronger than justice. Now let's talk about Harvey Weinstein, a name that shattered Hollywood. For years, he used his power to silence victims, threatening careers and destroying lives behind closed doors. Women who spoke up were ignored, blacklisted, or forced into silence. His empire collapsed only when too many voices refused to stabilize it. But for decades, the industry knew and did nothing. His story exposed how deep the corruption really ran. And finally, the system itself. The darkest secret of all is not one person, but a pattern. Power protects power. Money buys silence. Fame rewrites history. The world doesn't fall because of monsters. It falls because we keep letting them hide behind applause. So the next time you see a perfect smile, a standing ovation, a glowing headline, remember this: some of the darkest secrets in the world belong to the people we trust the most. We like to believe that evil looks obvious, that it wears a warning sign, but the truth is far more dangerous. Sometimes the darkest secrets live behind the most admired faces, and by the time the world realizes what's really happening, the damage is already done. Let's start with Hugh Hefner, the man who built an empire on fantasy. To millions, he was the symbol of freedom and luxury, but women who lived in his mansion later described it as a place of control, manipulation, and fear. They claimed they were pressured into harmful situations, given substances, and monitored through strict rules. What looked like a glamorous dream from the outside was, for many, a psychological prison. Next is R. Kelly, whose music defined a generation. For years, rumors followed him, until finally survivors spoke out. They described being isolated, controlled, and emotionally broken. Powerful people helped protect him, ignored warnings, and allowed him to continue for decades. His fame acted as a shield, turning whispers into silence, while lives were being destroyed. Now we turn to Maradona, a football legend worshipped across the world. On the field, he was unstoppable. Off the field, his life was filled with addiction, violence, and scandal. He struggled with substance abuse and was accused of abusive behavior. The same crowds that celebrated his goals often ignored the chaos that followed him everywhere. Then there is Jared Leto, an Oscar-winning actor known for intense method acting. Former co-stars and fans have accused him of using his influence to manipulate young admirers and blur professional boundaries. While no criminal convictions exist, the stories continue to surface, painting a disturbing picture of how fame can create dangerous power over others. Finally, we face a truth that is hard to accept. The world doesn't want the full story. We forgive celebrities faster than we forgive ordinary people. We excuse what we would never tolerate, because when someone becomes a symbol, we protect the symbol, even when the person behind it is broken. These secrets are not meant to destroy admiration. They are meant to wake us up, because fame doesn't make someone good or bad. It only makes the truth louder when it finally comes out. By now, one thing is clear. Fame doesn't create darkness. It hides it. The spotlight is so bright that it blinds us to what's happening just beyond its glow. And the final truth is this: the greatest secret of all is how easily the world chooses not to see. Let's begin with Prince Andrew, a member of the British royal royal family. For years, his connection to convicted trafficker Jeffrey Epstein was dismissed as a misunderstanding, but testimonies, flight records, and court documents told a different story. One woman accused him of abusing her when she was underage. Though he denied the claims, he quietly stepped away from royal duties. No trial, no verdict, just silence. For many, his case proved that status can still place someone above consequences. Next is Armie Hammer, once seen as Hollywood's next big star. Then, private messages were leaked, disturbing texts that suggested violent fantasies and emotional manipulation. While no criminal charges were proven, his career collapsed overnight. The man who played charming heroes was suddenly exposed as someone his own words betrayed. Then there is Britney Spears, whose breakdown became global entertainment. For years, she was controlled under a conservatorship that decided her money, her body, and her freedom. Fans were told it was for her protection, but when Britney finally spoke, the world realized she had been trapped, silenced, and treated like property. Her secret wasn't madness, it was captivity. Now let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein, a name that still sends chills through history. His power came not from fame, but from his connections. Politicians, royalty, billionaires all protected him. Victims spoke, evidence existed, and yet for years he walked free. His death left more questions than answers, and many secrets were buried with him. And finally, the truth that ties everything together. We create these systems. We reward success without asking how it was achieved. We defend icons instead of listening to victims. We clap while warning signs are ignored. So if there's one message to take away, it's this. Never confuse popularity with innocence. The darkest secrets don't belong to monsters in the shadows. They belong to the people we put on pedestals. At the end of every story, there is a moment of silence, the kind that forces you to face what you've just heard. And maybe the most uncomfortable truth of all is this. These secrets didn't survive because they were hidden. They survived because people chose not to look. Fame is not just a spotlight. It is a shield. It protects, excuses, distracts, and rewrites reality. When someone becomes larger than life, the world stops treating them like a human being and starts treating them like a brand. And brands are protected at all costs. Victims are doubted. Whispers are buried. Evidence is questioned. And slowly, truth is replaced with a story that feels easier to believe. But every secret leaves a mark. It lives in the people who were silenced, in the families who were broken, in the careers that vanished overnight. The pain doesn't disappear when the headlines move on. It waits, it grows, and eventually it finds its way back into the light. History shows us this pattern again and again. Power without accountability becomes danger. And when we stop asking questions, we become part of the silence. We don't need to destroy our heroes, but we do need to see them clearly, because admiration without honesty is just another form of blindness. So, as this series ends, remember, the darkest secrets are not just about famous people. They are about us, what we ignore, what we excuse, and what we allow to continue. The truth will always come out, only if we are brave enough to face it.